Chloe Carter here, and you are not gonna believe the story I'm about to drop. So I'm 29, and I thought my life was pretty normal until I stumbled into a family conspiracy that completely blew my world apart. It all started when my in-laws, the Sterlings, suddenly announced they were going on this bougie Caribbean cruise. They left me to take care of my 8-year-old niece, Maya, who I was told was non-verbal and bedridden. I was like, alright, I guess, but I had no idea what I was in for. They painted this picture of her being special needs from birth, couldn't talk, couldn't move, needed 24/7 care. Yeah, okay. Minutes after their town car peeled out of the driveway, my reality got flipped upside down. Before I get into the insane details, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And for real, you're gonna want to smash that like button and subscribe, cause you have to hear what went down when they came back. So, a little about me. I'm an elementary school teacher. Kids are my passion, my classroom is my jam. It's the one place I feel like I'm in charge, and people actually respect me. That feeling totally vanished the second I stepped into my husband's family home. Ethan and I had been married for 3 years when this all happened. He's a total sweetheart, smart, kind, the whole package. But his one major flaw? The dude would rather do anything than have a real conflict, especially with his family. And while I was head over heels for him, his family was a whole other story. The Sterlings are old money, and they never let you forget it. My father-in-law, Richard Sterling, is the definition of a domineering CEO type. He made his fortune in real estate and basically ran his family like a boardroom he owned. He's this tall, scary dude in a tailored suit who could make you feel like trash with just a look. His wife, Eleanor, was his perfect match. Ice cold, obsessed with appearances and their social status. Her blonde hair was always perfect, never a strand out of place, kind of like her frozen Botox face. She was the queen of the backhanded compliment. Oh, Chloe, honey, that outfit is a choice. So brave of you. I could never pull off something so casual. Ugh. Then there was Ashley, Ethan's older sister and Maya's mom. At 35, she'd never worked a day in her life, just coasting on her trust fund. She had Maya in her 20s with some guy who, conveniently, bounced before the baby was born. Ashley was gorgeous, entitled, and a completely checked-out mom. She treated Maya more like a prop than a person. Jason, Ethan's older brother, was a corporate lawyer who was basically his dad's puppet. He barely ever talked to me, like just acknowledging I existed might lower his stock in the family. And then there was my Ethan, the baby of the family, just desperate for a crumb of approval while also trying to keep me happy. He was stuck in the middle of a tug of war, and honestly, I felt like I was losing. From day one, I was the outsider. My middle-class background and my job as a public school teacher were basically dirt under their designer rugs. Nothing I ever did was good enough. My cooking was quaint, my house was simple, and my career was noble, but not practical. Every family dinner was a masterclass in biting my tongue for Ethan's sake. And then there was Maya. The family story was that she was born with some severe neurological thing that left her unable to talk or move. She needed constant care, which Ashley mostly pawned off on a revolving door of nurses. I'd see Maya at family events, always strapped in this specialized wheelchair, just staring blankly. But I always felt this weird vibe from her. Something in her eyes seemed sharp, like she was really in there. I just brushed it off. I'm not a doctor, and they said they'd seen the best specialists. The whole thing with me watching her started with a call from Eleanor 3 days before they left. It wasn't a request, it was a notification. Chloe, darling, we need you to stay at the estate and watch Maya while we're on our cruise. Wait, what about her usual nurses? I asked, already knowing I was being played. Oh, we had to let them go. So unreliable. Besides, family should handle family. Ethan already said it was fine. Of course he did, without even asking me. When I confronted him, he gave me that, I'm so sorry puppy dog look. Babe, they're in a real bind. It's just 2 weeks. We get to stay in the guest suite, it's basically its own apartment. What about my job? I can't just ditch my students. It's spring break next week, and Mom said Dad would call the superintendent for the second week. He's a huge donor for the district. And there it was. The Sterling way. Rules are for other people. So I caved. Not because I wanted to, but because saying no would start a family war Ethan wasn't ready for. The day before they left, we moved into the massive Sterling estate, and Ashley gave me a 5-minute crash course on Maya's care. She needs her meds 3 times a day. It's all labeled. Don't screw up the schedule or she gets difficult, she said, barely glancing at her own kid while she packed her designer bikinis. Difficult how? I asked. Just trust me. Keep her on schedule. She tossed a thick binder at me. Everything's in there. Feeding, meds, emergency numbers. Not that you'll need a doctor. It's all for show anyway. That last comment was weird, but before I could ask, Richard cut in. Chloe, understand this is a massive responsibility. We're trusting you with our precious granddaughter. Don't disappoint us. The next morning was a total circus. Luggage everywhere, last-minute orders being bugged. And not one of them, not even her own mother, said a real goodbye to Maya, who just sat in her wheelchair, supposedly oblivious. As they left, Ethan hugged me. Sorry, babe. Dad's making me come for some business meetings in Nassau. You'll be okay, right? I just nodded, feeling totally pissed off and abandoned. As I watched them drive off, leaving me alone with a child I barely knew in this huge, creepy mansion, I looked at Maya's blank face and sighed. Well, kiddo, I guess it's just you and me? Man, I had no idea. After they were gone, I wheeled Maya into the living room and put on some kids' show, just like the binder said. I talked to her the whole time, even though I felt kinda dumb talking to her like she got it. Gonna go make us some dinner, Maya. I'll be right in the kitchen if you need anything. I checked the binder. Time for her evening meds. I went to the kitchen, this massive stainless steel monstrosity that had probably never seen a home-cooked meal, and started prepping her liquid food and the pile of pills. I was making some pasta for myself, and as I was stirring the sauce, I got this creepy feeling, like someone was watching me. I spun around, expecting to see a housekeeper or something. But what I saw almost made me drop the spoon. Maya was standing in the doorway, not in her chair, standing. A little wobbly maybe, but on her own 2 feet, holding on to the door frame. Maya, I whispered. I thought I was hallucinating. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, with a little lisp, like any normal 8-year-old. They want my $5 million? Please, you gotta help me. The room started spinning. I grabbed the counter to keep from falling over. The mute, paralyzed kid just walked and talked. Maya, I said again, my voice shaking. You can talk and walk? She nodded, and those smart eyes I'd always noticed were now filled with terror and hope. Please don't tell them. They'll hurt me again. I forgot all about the stove and knelt on a few feet away from her. Maya, I don't get it. Who's gonna hurt you? What $5 million? Her face scrunched up. My mom and grandpa and grandma. They pretend I'm sick so they can get my money when I turn 18. My brain was short-circuiting. An entire family faking a kid's disability? It was too insane, too evil to be real. Come sit down, I said softly, leading her to a chair. Tell me everything. Over the next hour, while my pasta sauce burned, Maya laid it all out. Her other grandparents, the Danvers, Ashley's former in-laws whom the Sterlings hated, had died in a car crash when she was 3. They left Maya a $5 million trust fund, with Ashley as the trustee until Maya turned 18. Mommy started giving me medicine after Grandma and Grandpa Danvers died, she explained. It makes me all sleepy and floppy. When I tried not to take it, she'd pinch me, like really hard, or lock me in a closet. Tears were streaming down her face. They told everyone I was born sick, but I wasn't. I remember running and talking before the medicine. I felt sick to my stomach as she described being forced to play limp and mute, being punished if she ever slipped up. She told me how the family would talk right in front of her about their plans to have her declared mentally incompetent at 18 to control her inheritance forever. How do you know about the money? I asked. A flash of pride crossed her face. I taught myself to read. Mommy leaves her papers out. I have a diary where I write it all down. She led me, still a bit shaky on her feet, to her room, a cold, sterile space that just broke my heart. From under her mattress, she pulled out a small notebook and some folded papers she'd swiped from Ashley's office. The diary was filled with the neat handwriting of a kid who had secretly become literate. It documented everything: the conversations about her money, the meds, the threats. The papers included a copy of the Danvers Trust, bank statements, and most chillingly, draft paperwork for a psych evaluation to declare her incompetent. I sat on her bed, a mess of horror and rage boiling up inside me. Why are you telling me now? Why risk it? Because you're nice, she said, her eyes tearing up again. You talk to me like I'm a real person, and they've never left me with just one person before. It's always nurses who believe them. I was hoping, maybe you would help me. Right there, looking at this unbelievably brave little girl who had survived years of this nightmare, I made a choice. I will help you, Maya, I promised. I swear. The next morning, I had a choice to make. Give Maya the meds like I was told, or trust this kid and her insane story. My gut was screaming at me that she was telling the truth. I decided to trust it. I went through the motions of prepping her morning dose, but dumped it all down the sink. I just gave her the nutritional shake, my heart pounding as I watched for any bad reaction. There was none. By midday, the change was incredible. Maya was more alert, her movements getting steadier. Her speech got clearer. She was like a normal 8-year-old who'd just been locked away from the world. I feel so much better without them. Maya knew all the secret spots. Mommy keeps the important papers in her office, she said. The keys under the ficus plant. Ashley's office was just like her old style, no substance. The filing cabinet was locked, but the key was right where Maya said it'd be. Inside, we hit the jackpot. Financial docs detailing the Danvers $5 million trust. Legal letters about how Ashley was the trustee until Maya turned 18 or was deemed mentally capable. And then, the really sick stuff. A folder labeled Maya's condition. It was full of bogus medical records. Prescriptions for heavy-duty sedatives and muscle relaxants drugs that would absolutely make a healthy kid seem limp and out of it. Look, Maya said, pointing to a paper I'd missed. It was her original birth certificate and early doctor's reports. They showed a perfectly healthy baby hitting all her milestones. Then, right around age 3, the same time her grandparents died, the reports suddenly changed, documenting a rapid regression. My blood ran cold. Then Maya pointed to these tiny, almost invisible black dots in the corners of her ceiling. They watch me sometimes, she whispered, to make sure I'm being good. Surveillance cameras. They were monitoring her like a prisoner. As we dug deeper, Maya told me more horror stories. How Ashley would pinch or twist her arm if she so much as flinched when someone was around. How her grandpa Richard would come into her room at night and whisper threats about what would happen if she ever snitched. How Eleanor would parade her around at charity galas as the family's special burden to get sympathy and donations, which I now figured went straight into their pockets. Grandma Eleanor says I'm useful for making people feel sorry for them, Maya said, way too wise for her age. My phone rang. It was Eleanor, checking in. I put on my best happy-go-lucky voice, telling her everything was fine, while Maya sat next to me, eyes wide. Remember, Chloe, consistency is key, Eleanor chirped. Any change in her routine could be a problem. Of course, I said, my hand balled into a fist. Everything's going exactly to plan. After the call, we got onto Ashley's laptop. Maya knew the password. It's always her birthday, she shrugged. We found emails between the family, bitching about the burden of keeping up the act and planning to get her declared incompetent. One email from Richard to Ashley made me want to puke. The trust amendments are in motion. Judge Wilson owes me one. Once it's finalized, the money stays with the family, even if the girl somehow gets her act together. Maintain protocol. Behind a gaudy painting in Ashley's bedroom, we found a safe. I tried Ashley's birthday, nothing. Then I tried Maya's. Click, it swung open. Inside, more financial papers, jewelry, and a USB drive. We plugged it into the laptop. It was full of videos of Maya, as a toddler, running, laughing, talking. Hard proof. By that night I had a mountain of evidence, but one thing still bugged me. The sterlings were already loaded. Why go to all this trouble for $5 million? The answer was in a hidden compartment in Maya's wheelchair. She'd stashed a letter from her grandpa Danvers, meant for her 18th birthday. It said the $5 million was just seed money. The bulk of the Danvers estate, nearly $60 million, was in a separate trust that Maya would get at 25, but only if she was mentally competent and had control of the first trust. They weren't just playing for millions, they were playing for a damn fortune. That night, I tucked Maya into a guest room bed, far from the cameras. We're gonna fix this, I told her. You're not alone anymore. The next morning, Maya and I sat at the kitchen table, out of sight of any cameras, and made a plan. If you could have anything, I asked her, what would it be? Her answer crushed me. I want to go to a real school. I want friends. I want to stop being scared. She paused. And I want my mom to love me for real, not just pretend. I knew we needed backup. I called my best friend, Brianna Jones. She's a total shark of a family lawyer who specializes in child advocacy. Bri, you're not gonna believe this, I started. After I laid it all out, she was speechless. Jesus, Chloe. I don't even have words. This is one of the sickest cases of child abuse and fraud I've ever heard of. It's real, Bri. I've got the proof. This kid has been a prisoner in her own body for 5 years. Okay, listen to me, she said, all business. Document everything. Photos, copies, recordings, but be careful. These people are dangerous. They've kept this lie going for years. They won't think twice about destroying you. She promised to start prepping for an emergency court order, but warned me not to confront them alone. For the next few days, we operated like spies. I copied everything to a secure cloud account Brianna set up. We found more cameras all over the house, but we were careful, sticking to the blind spots. Every night, the family would call, and I'd keep up the act. Meanwhile, Maya was getting stronger every day. She was funny and smart and so damn tough. I kept wondering if I should tell Ethan. but his loyalty to his family had me sketched out. 5 days in, I decided to test him. I called him while Maya was taking a nap. Hey, how's the Caribbean? Awesome. Dad's meeting's wrapped early, so we're just chilling. How's Maya? I took a breath. Actually, I'm a little worried. Her meds seem really intense, and I found some weird papers about her trust fund. The line went cold. Chloe, he said, his voice sharp. You don't know anything about her condition. The meds are necessary, and her finances are none of your business. But Ethan, don't you think? Look, Ashley knows what's best. Just follow the damn instructions and stop snooping. That's so not cool. And that was it. My worst fear confirmed. Whether he was in on it or just willfully blind, Ethan was not on our team. You're right, I lied. I'm sorry. After I hung up, my resolve hardened. It was just me and an 8-year-old girl against a rich, powerful family who would literally destroy a child for money. The night before they were due back, Maya and I went over our plan. The evidence was locked down. We had a code phrase she could use if she felt unsafe. I even bought a burner phone and hid it in her room with emergency numbers programmed in. What if they don't believe us? She asked me over a bowl of ice cream. What if they make me go back to pretending? Not gonna happen, I said, squeezing her hand. Too many people know the truth now. What I didn't tell her was that I was terrified they'd get away with it. But I was ready to fight. As I tucked her in, she gave me a huge hug. Thank you for believing me, she whispered. Always, I promised. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. I just didn't know tomorrow was about to arrive at 3 a.m. I was jolted awake by voices in the foyer. They were back. Early. On purpose. I ran to Maya's room. She was already awake, trembling. They're back, she whispered. They do this sometimes, to check on me. I helped her get back into her official bedroom. Stick to the plan, I whispered. I won't let them hurt you. I'd barely gotten back to my room when Ashley showed up at my door. What are you doing up? Heard a noise, I lied. You're back early. Dad's business wrapped, she said, her eyes suspicious. Everything on schedule? Perfectly, I said smoothly. She pushed past me and checked on Maya, who played her part like a pro, all limp and blank. Ashley seemed satisfied and went downstairs. I followed her down. The whole Sterling clan was there. Chloe, Richard said coldly. I trust everything was satisfactory. Yes, I said. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Funny, Ashley says some of the medication is missing. My heart hammered, but I kept my face blank. I followed the instructions. Maybe you miscounted. Then we all heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Every head turned as Maya appeared in the doorway, standing tall, fully dressed, completely alert. Hello, Mommy, she said, her voice ringing through the silent room. Hello, Grandma, Grandpa. I'm feeling much better now. And then, all hell broke loose. Ashley screamed and lunged for Maya. Jason was cursing. Eleanor clutched her chest like she was in a soap opera. Richard's face went beet red as he turned on me. What have you done? I jumped between him and Maya. I've done nothing but stop you from drugging an innocent child. She needs her medication, Ashley shrieked, grabbing Maya's arm. No, Maya yelled, yanking her arm away. I won't take it. I know what you're doing. I know about my money. Silence, Chloe, Ashley said, her voice dangerously calm. My daughter is delusional. She needs a doctor. She's not delusional, I shot back. She's been pretending for years because you monsters threatened her. I know everything. The trust, the drugs, the cameras, all of it. You have no idea what you're talking about, Richard boomed, stepping toward me. Oh, I think I do, I said. I've seen the papers, the emails, the videos of her as a healthy toddler before you needed her inheritance money. Michael finally spoke up, looking totally lost. Jess, what is going on? Maybe we should just go home. There's nothing to discuss, Ethan. Your family has been abusing a child for years, and I'm not walking away. Suddenly, Ashley lunged for Maya again, this time with a pill bottle. You're taking this right now. I shoved her back, hard. Don't you touch her. That's assault. Richard roared, grabbing my arm. Jason, call the cops. We'll have her arrested. I wouldn't, I said, pulling out my phone, because the police and child protective services are already on their way. The whole vibe in the room shifted. You're bluffing. Richard snarled, but he looked nervous. Am I? I held up my phone, showing my call log. My friend is Brianna Jones, top family lawyer in the state. She has copies of everything. Just then the doorbell rang. Jason looked out the window. Crap, there's a cop car out front. The color drained from Richard's face. He opened the door to find 2 officers, a CPS worker, and my friend Brianna, looking like a total boss. Mr. Sterling, Brianna said. I'm Lauren Bishop, attorney at law. I believe you were expecting us. Richard tried to spin it, but Brianna shut him down. The officers insisted on talking to Maya. As it all went down, I saw the truth finally dawn on Ethan's face. He looked horrified. The breaking point came when Ashley, in a last-ditch effort, told the CPS worker, "Lily hallucinates. She makes up stories. She needs her meds." The worker looked at the bottle. "This is a powerful sedative, ma'am." "She's an extreme case," Ashley snapped. "Then you won't mind an independent evaluation," the worker said calmly. "You can't take her," Ashley screamed, lunging at me. An officer grabbed her. In the chaos, Ethan finally moved. He knelt in front of Maya. "Maya," he said, his voice breaking, "tell me the truth. Has my family been hurting you?" Maya looked at me and I nodded. "They make me take medicine that makes me sick," she said. "They said they'd send me away forever if I talked. They want my money from my other grandparents." Ethan's face just crumpled. He turned to his family. "Is this true? Have you been doing this to her for money?" Richard tried to talk his way out of it, but it was over. Brianna stepped forward with a folder. "I have emails detailing your plan to have her declared incompetent, conspiracy and child abuse." Richard then made his final fatal mistake. He tried to bribe the cops. "I'm sure we can come to an arrangement," he said in a low voice. The lead officer's face hardened. "Sir, are you attempting to interfere with an investigation?" That's when Ashley completely broke. "It was Daddy's idea," she sobbed, pointing at Richard. "The company was failing. He said we needed the money. He arranged everything, the doctors, the meds. I just did what he told me." "Amanda, shut up," Richard bellowed, but the damage was done. The confession was out. The next few hours were a blur. Maya went to the hospital with me, the CPS worker, and a shell-shocked Ethan. Richard and Ashley were taken in for questioning. The Sterling empire had crumbled. At the hospital, doctors confirmed it. Maya was a perfectly healthy kid. In the waiting room, Ethan finally broke down. "I had no idea, Chloe. I swear. You didn't want to know," I said gently. "The signs were there. You chose not to see them." He didn't argue. He just took my hand. We were finally on the same side. The aftermath. 3 months later, I was in a courtroom as a judge finalized our temporary guardianship of Maya. The fallout had been epic. Richard and Ashley were charged with a laundry list of felonies. Richard tried to bribe a detective and got hit with witness tampering too. Ashley took a plea deal to testify against him. Eleanor wasn't charged, but her precious reputation was toast. Ethan and I were in intense counseling. He'd cut all financial ties with his family and was starting his own business. But the biggest change was in Maya. Free from the drugs and the fear, she was thriving. She was in school, she had friends, she was in therapy for the trauma. Her trust fund was now managed by a court-appointed professional, safe and secure for her future. As the judge signed the papers, Maya squeezed my hand. "It's official," she whispered. "It's official," I whispered back. That night, we had a small party at our new house, far away from the Sterling estate. I watched Maya laughing and playing in the backyard with her friends, and I thought about how close she came to losing everything. The next morning, I walked her into my school for her first day. "Think they'll like me?" she asked. "They'll love you," I told her. "Just be you." That night, Ethan told me something that made my heart swell. "She asked me today if she could call us Mom and Dad," he said, his voice thick. "What did you tell her?" "That she could call us whatever makes her happy. That family isn't just about blood." I rested my head on his shoulder. We were going to be okay, more than okay. We were going to be the family she always deserved. So what would you have done? Would you have had the guts to go up against a family like the Sterlings to save a kid you barely knew? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Your support helps us raise awareness for kids who might be trapped in situations just like this. Thanks for listening.